This is Catholic Schools Week, and it's a great privilege and a blessing for us to be able to celebrate Mass, to be able to do it at school, and to celebrate Catholic schools. And what we've done over the years with Catholic Schools Week at Cardinal Gibbons is we've frequently talked about not only the history of our school, but the history of Catholic schools across the country. And the reason that we do so is because for us, it really binds us to all of the others who are working in and enjoying Catholic education on a daily basis. And for many of us who went to Catholic schools all in different parts of the country, it also reminds us of where we went to school as well. We also talk about the history of Cardinal Gibbons High School, which is a fascinating history. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. What I want to do for you is to connect our history to the future, because even throughout the week as we celebrate our community and our legacy, our alumni and the past of our school, we are at one of the most unique periods and times of history ever for our school and for our diocese. And what I hope to do for you today is to be able to show you why it's such an incredible time and to connect what we do here on a daily basis to not only the future of this school, to the future of the diocese, but to your futures as well. I'm going to start in 2011. This is a picture from a Mass, Immaculate Conception. And the t-shirts that you see the students wear, those are t-shirts that they made. And the reason that they made those t-shirts, one, they're blue for Immaculate Conception. But it was also very shortly after that Bishop Burbage had announced that the Diocese of Raleigh was going to be building a new cathedral. Now, an announcement and a decision like that is one of great faith, but also takes some courage, as you might imagine. And so shortly after he made that announcement, he was coming here to celebrate this Mass. And our students really knew that they wanted to support him and support this new project in a very special way. So they had these shirts made up and they said in the back, "This is our house." They also made up wristbands. I'm wearing a couple of them here. They say, "This is our house," and back to the bishop. And what they did at that Mass, and the students organized all of this, is they presented the bishop with one of the very first donations for the cathedral. This is before any of you were here at school. And the bishop, I think, was appreciative of the donation, and he was appreciative of all the support. But what he told me that day, and has told me many times since, is that he was overwhelmed and encouraged and inspired that the students at the school that he loves so much would know and care about why this was so important. And he knew that it was the students, because there wasn't anybody else in the diocese coming up with the slogan, "This is our house." And a lot of parishes were coming up with that slogan and putting it on shirts. He said, "This is the students. I love this school," is what he told me, "and I love that they care about this so much." So that's where we start, because that was before any of you got here to school. So what we're going to do is we're going to step back a little bit and talk about why our students did that, because I think it was more than just our connection to the bishop. Our school has a very unique connection to this project as well. So allow me to do a couple slides of history before we go into what's coming next. All right, so this is a map of Raleigh back in the late 1800s, about the time, a little bit before Cardinal Gibbons High School was actually started in 1909. Just to orient you there, the middle is the Capitol, still where it sits today. Right down the street is where Cardinal Gibbons High School was founded as Sacred Heart Academy. So just literally right down the street from there. And as you see, downtown Raleigh, there's not much around it. Kind of surrounding hills, there's nothing really on them. Actually, not a lot of trees back then. It was pretty wide open. But there's a part of the land down at the very bottom of the map down there at the circle that a young priest named Father Thomas Price purchased. And he decided to buy this land. It was the highest point surrounding the city of Raleigh, overlooked the entire city. This is Father Thomas Price on that land. And what he decided to do on that land was to build an orphanage and a school. And this is that orphanage and school. It's Nazareth Orphanage. And this is why the gym that you sit in today is called Father Price Gym. And the room, as you come into the gym on the right, is called the Nazareth Room for this precise orphanage. Here's another picture of it in the early 50s. And so to orient you where it is in Raleigh, that street down there is Western Boulevard. The bottom right-hand corner is Pullen Park. That's the pond there. And all behind it now is NC State's Centennial Campus. That back then obviously was wide open. So that is where NC State is, and that circle up there is where the orphanage was. Now on that property, not only were there dormitories for all of the orphans and buildings for classes, there was also a chapel. This is one of the only known pictures of that chapel. The name of the chapel was Holy Name of Jesus Chapel. There's not much that remains of this chapel today, except there's one piece of it that you walk by every day and you may not have known it. In the main lobby of our school, right there next to the main office, on that plaque, there are pieces of various parts of our school's history. In the upper left-hand corner are two pieces of the roof of Holy Name of Jesus Chapel, maybe some of the only remaining parts of that chapel today. And why we have those is explained in this next, because after the orphanage was closed down, Bishop Waters moved our school to that campus in the early 1960s. It was the Western Boulevard campus. And it was at that time that we were no longer called Sacred Heart or Cathedral Latin, but we became Cardinal Gibbons High School. It was also at that time that we changed our school colors to those of Nazareth Orphanage, which were green and gold, and adopted their mascot, which was the Crusaders. So much of our school history came from this move and from us taking over what was left of Nazareth Orphanage, and that's the campus. So behind, and I think that's all of you are wondering if that's like two classes. No, that's the whole school out there back at that time. And up above them there is the center of the campus, that courtyard that's up there, and that's going to be important here in a second. So this is an important time in our history. We stayed on this campus until 1999 when we moved to our current campus here at Edwards Mill. That's the Western Boulevard campus. Now here's an overhead shot of that just a year ago with most of those buildings cleared away. And you can see some of the street names in that part of Raleigh reflect our history there. There's Crusader Drive, right above where the school was. There's Price Street, named after Father Price. There's Agnes Street, which is named after Father Price's mother. And then of course Nazareth Street next to it as well. We'll zoom in on this particular part where the school was. This was taken right before the last parts of the school were taken down. They're circled right there, and that is the center of where the heart of the school was. And if you look above it to the right, where that dirt patch is, that's where the gym was. And to the bottom left was where our baseball field, football field, soccer field, PE field, and this all one field was right below this school there. And you can still see some of that baseball field there. What I want to show you is where Holy Name of Jesus Cathedral will go in relation to where our school campus was. The very center of this cathedral will be right at where the center of our school was. And so if you go to that center of where our courtyard was, this is what it will look like in 2017, God willing. That will be where the center of our school was. So now you may know why in 2011, because our students had just celebrated the 100th anniversary of our school, now you know why they had a very unique connection to this cathedral, and they knew that this was going to be important. As you step back a little bit from that part of the cathedral, when you enter, on both sides, there will be stained glass, there will obviously be pews as you walk in, but there will also be spaces for statues. And Father Tom in his homily today talks about St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. She was the very first American-born saint. She was really the foundress of Catholic schooling in the United States. And the Catholic schools of the Diocese of Raleigh have gotten together and said, we would like to have a statue of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in this cathedral, so that everyone who goes in can know how important this saint and Catholic schools are in this diocese. So similar to what our students did in 2011, our students have decided to take up a collection for that statue. Now tomorrow you have a dress down day. Now normally when we do that, we'll collect cans or we'll collect money for Catholic Parish Outreach or Catholic Charities. Tomorrow there is no mandatory collection. You get to decide. But I'm going to encourage you to bring in some money to support that statue. Because someday you'll be walking in that cathedral, and that statue you know will be there because students in Catholic schools said this was important. Just like the students 4 years ago know that they supported their bishop in that statue. And so tomorrow, if you want to bring in funds for that, we would love to have you have that. I know that the faculty and staff will be doing so as well. So let's take some of this history and let's now move forward. We have taken parts of that Western Boulevard campus and our original Cathedral campus here. Some of you may remember that from being younger and playing in that gym. That was the Cardinal Gibbons gym over on Western Boulevard. Shortly before it was taken down, and then you can see there in the center, that is the center of that gym floor. Our baselines are on the walls. In the Crusader room, we have, of course, pieces of the floor. And maybe best of all, we have those beams up there in our pavilion in the back of the campus. That's Mr. Bass there with Monsignor Lewis, somebody who's very important in Catholic education as well. But it's not just about buildings and about pieces of our old campus and all of these kind of artifacts. It's really more about something else, and that's what I want to talk to you about this morning. See, earlier this week, we had members of the 1966 basketball team come back on campus, and they put that banner up there. And I think that that's a really appropriate place for that banner. And the reason is because not only can you see that floor from Western Boulevard, that banner is holding up all of those other banners that we have above it. Because the reality is, in 1966, when really not many schools still wanted to play us, remember, we were the first integrated high school in the state of North Carolina, so not many people wanted to play us in sports. It really kind of made it difficult for us to have sports at all on campus. Even back in that time, they did something special. Now, do you think that those players back then really knew it? I don't know that they did. But they did something really important and special, and as a result of what they and their coaches and their parents did, all of those other banners then are possible. But it's really not about the banner, because when they come on back on campus, and boy, this campus is different. And they never would have imagined having a maker space, 2 gyms, all of these. They never would have imagined that. But then they all said something that felt very familiar, because they got with their team before the game in the locker room and prayed together. And they said that hasn't changed in 50 years. Because the history of this school and the history of what we're going to do isn't really about the buildings, it's about the people. And that is the legacy of our school. And this is where your history comes in. Last year, before the remaining buildings on that campus were taken down to make way for the new cathedral, our faculty and staff went over to that campus one last time. Now, for some of our faculty and staff, they were students there, or they taught there. For some, it was brand new. They'd never been to that place. We went over there, we prayed, and we had lunch together. People who've been there told stories, talked about what it was like on that campus. And all of you know that we've got the best faculty and staff anywhere. But the only reason that we have such great teachers and such great staff is because people came before us. People committed to making this school something special. That's why all of us are here. And it was important to know where those people did their work, where they taught, where they worked, how they made this possible. And so for us to have one last meal there was really important, right around where the center of the cathedral will be. One last story before I wrap up. When we did our 100th anniversary in 1909, we had a bunch of alumni come back, and some of them had not been on campus for many, many years. And I remember we were sitting down, and this was before the new campus was kind of built, so we're sitting in the small lobby, and there was an older alum. He had been at Nazareth Orphanage, those are our alumni as well. And he was telling stories, and he was talking about what it was like. And he was talking with students, and he was funny, and students really loved him. And then all of a sudden he said, well, you know, I helped build the cathedral. And everybody stopped. So what do you mean you built the cathedral? So I helped build the cathedral. Well, now, when we look at these old buildings, we think, I can't really imagine a building that should have been there forever, right? I mean, you don't think about somebody building them. He said, yeah, when I was at the orphanage, I would walk from the orphanage down a couple miles, down to downtown, and I would carry all of the stones for the stonemasons. He said, I would do this whenever we didn't have school where I could get away. And we said, wow, you know, and tell us about it. He said, well, he said, I was doing it, and then one day when I was carrying a stone up to the roof, one of the workers said, hey, how old are you? He said, I'm 11. And that was the last day I got to work on the cathedral. But it was really interesting because the students were so fascinated when you were around when the cathedral was built. And all of a sudden you realize, well, every one of you here is going to be able to tell that story. Every one of you is going to be able to explain to somebody who's looking at that cathedral, not only did I see it being built, I know why it's important. I know its history and I know how it's connected to me. So here's what I want you to think about during Catholic Schools Week, especially this year. I want you to think about that cathedral and its connection to you. This is Mr. Rogestich yesterday took a group of students over to the construction site. The people who are building the cathedral are the same people who built our school. Took a picture in front of that cathedral in construction. And what I want to show you is we'll show you a flyover of the current construction progress. But I want you to think differently about a building and the progress. What you see is you see maybe what Father Christ saw when he purchased this land and looked down on Rolla. Maybe you imagine, you know, all of the Cardinal Gibbons students and the faculty, the teams that played there, all the people who call that Western Boulevard campus home. Maybe you think about all of the history of our school. But I would prefer you think about the future. You know, some of you here today, that's where your baccalaureate mass is going to be when you graduate. Some of you will be going to masses, Chrism Mass, and other diocesan liturgies in this cathedral. Alumni from Cardinal Gibbons have been married in the cathedral downtown. This may be where some of you get married. And God willing, some of you may be called to the priesthood. That might be where you're ordained. Every single one of those liturgies and events, you'll be surrounded by family and friends and classmates, people that you're sitting next to today. And so it's really not so much about the history, that makes it special, but what makes it really important is the future. And so think about your role, how important this will be, because it's really a beautiful building, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that it's your house. The reason we do Catholic education is because your parents, the teachers, the alumni, we want you to know that that is your house. It's God's house. God has given it to all of you. And we want you to be as certain of that today as you will be for the rest of your lives. Because you will be that person who will be able to say, I remember when that was built. And I remember all the important things in my life that happened in that space. And I know how blessed I have been to not only be educated in a Catholic school, but to be a part of this church and this faith community. This isn't about history, it's about future. And you are that future for our church. And that's why Catholic Schools Week is important. So today, say a prayer of gratitude and thanks for all those who've gotten us here. And get excited about the future of where you are going. Enjoy watching the rest of this, and have a good rest of Catholic Schools Week.